Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the idea of how you would write an equation for a parabola. So given a graph, how would you write the equation? So when writing equations for parabolas, it is helpful to first determine the x-intercepts, the y-intercept, the vertex, and the axis of symmetry. So all of the things that we've been talking about, but let's determine them from a graph so that we can figure out an equation. I would recommend first writing the equation in factored form. So that's y equals a multiplied by x minus r1 and x minus r2. Now if you remember from the beginning, r1 is one of the roots, which again means an x-intercept. R2 is the other root. Now if there's only one root, then you would just write it twice. Then solve for a by substituting the y-intercept or the vertex. We're going to talk a little bit about that. That's going to be the newest part of what we learned today. Then you can convert into standard form, which is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, let's see what this looks like in the examples. So here's the first example. We see the graph, and then we're actually going to work backwards to the equation. So if I look at the graph, I notice that there's an x-intercept here, and there's an x-intercept here. So my x-intercepts are 1, 0, and 3, 0. Okay, I've got my y-intercept that's up here, which is 0, 6. I've got my vertex, which is down here, and that's 2, -2. And my axis of symmetry is that line that splits everything in half, which is x equals 2. Okay, great. So we're going to start out with the factored form. Now in the factored form, we're looking for something that's like y equals a multiplied by x minus r1 and x minus r2. Okay? So if I just look at the roots, 1 and 3, I know that those are going to be right here. So y equals a multiplied by x minus 1 and x minus 3. So now what I'm going to do is actually double check here. So x minus 1 equals 0. If I solve that, I'd add 1, so yeah, x equals 1, that works out. And then x minus 3 equals 0, add 3, yeah, that works out, x is equal to 3. So in a sense, it's always going to be the opposite of what the x-intercepts are. So these will be opposite x-intercepts. So if the x-intercepts are positive, then the equation will be negative. If the x-intercepts are negative, then the equation will be positive. Okay, so now I still have to figure out what this a is. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my y-intercept, and you can either do this with your y-intercept or your vertex. And I'm going to substitute it in. Now remember, this x is 0, and this y is 6. I'm going to rewrite this equation, all right? But instead of y, I'm going to write 6. And instead of the x's, I'm going to write zeros. And that's just coming from this point right here, 0, 6 in green. So I'm going to write 6 equals a multiplied by 0 minus 1 multiplied by 0 minus 3. And now I'm going to solve. So I've got 6 is equal to a multiplied by 0 minus 1 gives me negative 1. 0 minus 3 gives me negative 3. Okay. So now I've got 6 is equal to a multiplied by negative 1 times negative 3 gives me a positive 3. Now if you think way back to the first semester, and if you want to get a alone here, the inverse operation of multiplication is going to be division. So you're going to divide 3 on both sides of the equation. You're going to find 6 divided by 3, that a is equal to 2. So what does that mean practically for you? That means that the factored form, I'm going to write it over here. The factored form is y. It's not a 2. It's not a, but a is actually 2. 2 multiplied by x minus 1 multiplied by x minus 3. And that is my factored form. Now if I want to write it in standard form, I can multiply x minus 1 by x minus 3. I'm going to use my box method that we learned a few lessons ago. So x times x, that makes x squared. X times negative 1 makes negative 1x. Negative 3 times x makes negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 1 makes positive 3. And I recognize my like terms right here, negative 1x and negative 3x. So I know it's going to be y equals 2 multiplied by x squared minus 4x plus 3. Okay, and now that I have that, I can distribute the 2. I'm going to write that, I'm going to write it over here, just so you have a little bit more space. Y is equal to 2 multiplied by x squared, that's 2x squared. 2 multiplied by negative 4x is negative 8x. And 2 multiplied by positive 3 is positive 6. So this is my standard form equation. And this is my factored form equation right here. Okay, let's move forward. So again, the basic idea is that we're working in reverse. We're starting from the graph, labeling all the key features, and then moving backwards to the equations. So I'm going to start with my x-intercepts. I notice negative 2, 0 and positive 2, 0. Now remember here, the x-intercepts will be the opposite. So if I've got y equals x minus r1 and x minus r2, but the opposite of negative 2 is going to be positive 2. So I've got y is equal to a multiplied by x plus 2, and then I'm going to take the opposite of negative 2, or sorry, the opposite of positive 2, I'm going to get negative 2. So now I just need to figure out what is this a. So what's going to help me do that is the y-intercept, which is 0, negative 2. And you'll notice that the y-intercept is also the vertex in this case. And that the axis of symmetry, if it's right down the middle, that means it's x equals 0. Okay? So I'm going to do my work here. We've got y is equal to a multiplied by x plus 2 multiplied by x minus 2. Now again, I want to substitute either the vertex or the y-intercept. In this case, they're the same. So let's say I substituted the vertex. I'm using 0, negative 2, so that means x and y. So instead of this y, what am I going to write? This negative 2 equals a multiplied by, what am I going to write instead of the x's? I'm going to write zeros, plus 2, minus 2. And now I solve. So negative 2 is equal to a multiplied 0 plus 2 is 2. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. So I've got negative 2 is equal to a multiplied 2 multiply negative 2 makes negative 4. And again, if you think back to the first semester, If I want to isolate a, and this is being multiplied, the inverse operation is division. So I divide -4 on both sides. So now I've got a is equal to negative divided by a negative is a positive, so I've got +2/4. Common mistake here is people want to divide 4 by 2 and call it 2. This is not the case here. 2/4 is the same as, if you divided 2 out of numerator and denominator, it's the same as 1/2. So in this case, a is 1/2. So when I rewrite my equation, y is equal to 1/2 multiplied by x plus 2 multiplied by x minus 2. If x and y are your only variables, you've figured out the equation. Alright, so now to find the standard form equation, again you create a box. X minus 2, x plus 2. X multiplied by x makes x squared. X multiplied by -2 makes -2x. Positive 2 multiplied by x is plus 2x, and positive 2 multiplied by -2 is -4. I find my like terms, -2x and positive 2x. Remember, those would make a zero pair, so we're just left with x squared minus 4. So I've got y is equal to half of x squared minus 4. Now if my a is not 1, I actually have to distribute, so half times x squared and then half times -4. I'm going to rewrite down here in blue. So y is equal to half times x squared is just half of x squared, and half of -4 is -2. So this is my standard form equation, and this is my factored form equation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do example 3. Example 3. Again, I want to begin with my x-intercepts. We've got -1, 0, and +1, 0. So I can begin writing my factored form equation. It's going to be y is equal to a multiplied by x. Opposite of -1 gives me +1. Opposite of +1 gives me -1. Okay, my y-intercept is 0, 3, which again is also my vertex. And my axis of symmetry is x equal to 0. Okay, so if I want to find a, again I want to substitute either the vertex or the y-intercept. Again, both of them are the same this time, so x and y. So y is going to be 3 equals a multiplied by, you change the x's to zeros. This is 0 plus 1, and this is 0 minus 1. So that means 3 is equal to a multiplied by +1 multiplied by -1. I'm going to continue my work over here. So 3 is equal to a multiplied by, if I multiply 1 and -1, that gives me -1. So again, if we think back to the first semester, this is being multiplied. The inverse operation is division. So you divide -1. So a is equal to -3. So my factored form is y is equal to -3 multiplied by x plus 1 multiplied by x minus 1. That's my factored form equation. To find my standard form equation, I want to multiply x plus 1 and x minus 1, and then distribute the -3. So x plus 1, x minus 1, that gives me x squared, +1x, -1x, and -1. Again here, +1x and -1x create a zero pair, so I'm left with x squared minus 1. So it's y equals -3 multiplied by x squared minus 1. And I want to distribute this -3 So I end up with y is equal to negative 3x squared plus 3. Okay, and that's the video for today.